I want to play my Gibson Custom 1964 SG Standard with Maestro Vibrola VOS. We're going to find out if this thing's any good. This video isn't like other videos out there, you know, where they talk for 7.5 minutes and only play the guitar for like a minute, minute and a half. There's about 15 minutes of playing, and I still talk like a goof. We're also going to be doing comparisons with 2 other guitars. And as always, the signal chain is listed in the description down below. There's also chapter markers, so if you want to jump around, you can do that. But enough talking. Let's get after it. See, you can't really do a review on YouTube unless you talk about the specs, right? So we're going to try and do that quickly, and then we're going to get to 5 more sound samples. So starting off, we have a single-piece mahogany body with the vintage original sheen finish. This is just a little bit lighter gloss nitro than the Gibson USA. We have a single-piece mahogany neck that has the 59 medium C neck carved to it. We also have a bound rosewood fretboard with the trapezoid inlays. On the front of the headstock is where we're going to see the inlaid Gibson logo along with the inlaid thistle, holly leaf, or the crown. Gibson's called it a whole bunch of different things over the years. And you're also going to see a blank truss rod cover because this was the first full year that this was known as the SG and not a Les Paul. On the back of the headstock is where you're going to see the double-ringed Kluson Vintage Deluxe Premium tuners. Now, very important, these are vintage sizing. So that means if for some reason on a reissue you wanted to swap things out here, maybe put some Grovers on here or modern-sized locking tuners, it would mean you'd have to actually ream out the holes here to make them bigger so the tuners would fit. We have 2 volume and 2 tone. The potentiometers here are the CTS audio taper potentiometers. They're still Gibson branded. Everything is hand soldered, and these have the Black Beauty capacitors, not to be confused with the Bumblebee capacitors. They're a little different. 3-way toggle switch, and that controls the custom Bucker Alnico 3 unpotted pickups. As far as a bridge, we have the Maestro Vibrola here and the ABR1 that actually has nylon saddles, just like the nylon nut. Now the ABR1 is drilled directly into the body rather than using that metal doweling system that you would typically see on the stop bar or what they actually use in the Gibson USA range. But that's it for the specs. Here's 5 more sound samples. Now, I always say the next part in these type of review videos because I find it kind of funny because I'm stupid. I'm actually doing the next portion here to appease the internet. I'm trying to prevent tears from forming themselves into comments. It is highly beneficial though. So we're going to actually listen to this in clean with all 3 pickup positions. But I've always been the kind of player that likes to hear how the pickups and the guitar react to a little bit of like light drive. So here's that. And as stated earlier, of 2-volume, 2-tones, they're the audio taper CTS potentiometers, still Gibson branded, hand soldered with the Black Beauty capacitors. So let's go ahead and wiggle some knobs and you can hear them. Now, let's take a look at the most controversial and most beneficial part of the 1964 SG Standard with Maestro Vibrola. So that is the Maestro Vibrola. So I'm going to bring in the Gibson USA for a second. So here's the Gibson USA. We're going to be taking a look at this a little later. But this has the Maestro Vibrola on it. Now, I was told up and down that this thing does not stay in tune whatsoever. And basically it's from a lot of people that either just played it in the store and went and brought it right back up. They just dive bombed. Or it's people who don't tune up to pitch, they tune down to pitch, or tune to whatever to pitch, and then don't tug on their strings. If you're not doing that, then it's definitely going to go out of tune. Back to the custom shop, this has seemed to yield a little bit better results with maybe, I would say, the general public, I guess. So people who've gone into the store and they've gone, and it's like, oh, it stays in tune better. Now, when it comes to the Maestro Vibrolas, they're not a Floyd Rose. On the custom shops, it seems you can dive bomb, and all the strings will stay in tune together, but it will ever so slightly, like if you're reefing on it, it'll ever so slightly start to go flat. But if you are using it kind of with its intended purpose, which is to add a little bit of shimmer, it works perfectly fine and does not come out of tune. So let's listen to that. Now, you heard that it stayed in tune. Let's actually start to dive bomb a little bit, and to the keen ear, you want to listen because it's going to start to go a little bit flat. Now let's really start to reef on things, and you'll start to hear it goes a little more flat. So that's how that works. So when it comes to the Maestro Vibrola, it's like things aren't locked into place, and it's meant to, you know, add a little bit of jangle or shimmer going on. When you start to dive bomb, it'll still, like all the strings will stay in tune with themselves, but they'll start to ever so slightly go flat. Whether people can hear that or not, remains to be seen, right? It's if you're going to be playing this all night and you're dive bombing all night, just tune in between every song. But if you're using it for its intended purpose, then you'll be fine. All right, so let's grab that Gibson USA and let's do a quick comparison between both of these guitars with all three pickup positions. I do have a more in-depth comparison between both of these guitars where I go through like 5 different sound samples and such. So I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to check it out. But like some of the biggest differences here, obviously pickups, the 61R, 61T, or the 60s burst buckers. They're a lot more hot than the custom buckers, and there's a little bit more EQ skewing to the high end and the low end here, rather than the custom buckers, which seem to be they're not flat, but you know what I mean. They're pretty well rounded with just a little bit of a sweeter top end. And also the biggest difference here would be the necks. So we have the slim tapered neck on the SG Standard 61, the USA, with Maestro Vibrola, and we have the 59 medium C neck on the Custom Shop 64. So here's that 3 pickup position comparison. And for the last comparison, because I really don't want to drag this video out, I could grab a Gretsch or something like that, but I don't think it's needed here. But let's do a comparison between the 1964 VOS and the 1961 VOS. So same thing here, we have the 59 medium C neck on it and the slim tapered neck on the 1961. Also, the 1964 was just referred to as an SG, whereas the 1961 was the new, and what they thought at that point, improved Les Paul. So here's a very simple 3 pickup position comparison, but again, I did a full-on comparison here, so if you want to take a look at that, I'll leave a link in the description as well. Alright, so that's it for all of the comparisons and the sound samples and stuff like that. So with those, you should be able to hear, albeit like, you know, with my amp choices, setting choices, tuning choices, and, you know, me playing it with my hands, with my goofy brain, with what I wanted to play, that should give you an idea of whether you think this sounds like a good guitar or not. But sound is only 10% of the equation, because you can spend money and you can change the sound, but it's harder to actually spend money and change the feel, which is more than likely, for most people, 90% of the equation, even though they don't really know it. So what I'd like to do here is actually talk about how the guitar feels to me, not my feelings, but how the guitar feels to me itself. So, and like I said in all of the other VOS or Murphy Lab review videos that I did, this has a little bit of witchcraft in it. I can't narrow things down, but it rings out like it's one solid piece. SGs are only 2 different species of wood, so we're looking at mahogany and rosewood, in this case Indian rosewood. But they're different pieces, you know what I mean? Like, it's one piece body, one piece neck. It's not like the body and the neck, like it's a glued in, it's joined by glue, right? But it feels like it's one solid piece. So to me, it seems like it vibrates a lot more. It's a little louder than the USA one. And it's just a lot more pleasing to play because of that. Now, there's a couple of factors that could go into that. It's the vintage original sheen finish, so it's a lighter application. I think it's like the same amount of coats, or it's more coat. It's something weird like that, but it's sort of like an aged finish without having all the cracks and stuff like that in it, which is done in the Murphy Lab. But because of that, it's lighter, so it's not, there's not as much of the high gloss that goes into this. So because of that, acoustically, so what you feel in your body when you're playing, is sort of like a cross between satin nitro and high gloss nitro. So satin nitro, you feel way, way, way more of the low end resonance in your body when you're playing. But what ends up happening is you're stripped away of a lot of that like upper range, so like a lot of the presence. Again, this is what you're feeling in your body when you're playing. So a lot of times with satin nitro guitars, like the Tribute series and stuff like that, they'll actually pair it with a maple neck, because maple has that snappier feel. So that kind of combats the loss of the like upper mid-range presence that you're missing in the overall feel of the guitar. But with high gloss, you get a lot of that upper mid-range. You get a little bit of resonance. It's not like you're like losing a ton, but it's not like it's all resonance that you're feeling, or all low end that you're feeling in the playing. It's a little more balanced, but that low end isn't as much as with the satin stuff, which is why a lot of people actually play the satin nitro stuff and they're like, wow, this feels great, and you know, because in your body. But with the VOS, the Vintage Original Sheen, because it's less applications, you still have that upper mid-range feeling. You don't lose anything from the high gloss, but you're now gaining a lot more of the resonance. So it's a lot more balanced acoustically feel in your body when you're playing it. Next up, we're gonna put our tinfoil hats on, and we're gonna talk about the glue, because this uses hide glue to attach the fretboard and the neck itself. Hide glue, I've heard when I was younger, and then you can still read it on the internet, although some people think that people are crazy. But it basically, it hardens differently than like yellow glue or super glue and stuff like that. And some people say that it has a more solid connection, so things actually are a little better acoustically. People say that things actually fuse a little better with hot hide glue, but I don't have this exact guitar without the hot hide glue to really be able to narrow things down. And the fact that this is a single piece mahogany body, although my USA Maestro, from what I can tell, is a single piece, but a lot of people that say their SG is a single piece mahogany body just cannot see the seam, because Gibson is really, really good with hiding seams on SGs. So it's really hard for me to say that the USA that I have is a single piece mahogany body, because I can almost see a seam. And I've seen some bodies where people swear up and down that it's a single piece, but you can actually see the seam. It's hidden, but you can see it. So that could play another factor into this. Now, this has nylon saddles rather than the nickel-coated brass saddles that are on like the 1961 Les Paul. So this does give it a little bit of a different feel. So that could actually play a factor into why it feels so different with the other guitars, but it's just really hard to narrow things down. Because of that, playing leads on this, because it does seem that it rings out a lot more, there's a lot more vibrancy, or vibration, I guess you can say, in the playing. I just find that with this and the other VOS guitars that I do own in the One Murphy Lab, it's just a lot more pleasing to play leads, and it kind of inspires me to play a little more than I would on the USA. Well, I buy, okay, I'll buy a lot. And that also translates into like strumming or chording or just playing general rhythm stuff as well. It's just a lot more pleasing and a lot more inviting to play. And the custom buckers here, when it comes to pickups, I find it hard to say with whether one's better than the other, because when it comes to guitar, everything's really down to preference. You could play the Gibson USA and like it more than the Gibson Custom. You could like the Gibson Custom more than the USA. You could like the Epiphone more than either of them. It's just all down to the individual and what they're looking for and what they actually feel when they're playing the guitar. And that can change over time as well. But the same thing goes for pickups. I went down a rabbit hole with pickups, which I benefited in the long run, but because of all of that, I kind of can narrow down a little more with what I'm looking for in a pickup. And for the most part, what I'm looking for is I don't prefer hotter pickups. I like stuff that's a little more reserved. I find that I can kind of dial in the amp a lot better when I'm doing it with that type of pickup, rather than hotter pickups, which it just seems like I have to make that adjustment on the amp. So I'm compensating for that in the amp, whereas with a more reserved pickup, it just seems like it's a little more natural when I'm dialing in my amp. And again, we as guitar players are crazy for thinking these sort of things, but that's sort of what goes through our mind. And I don't like having pickups that have a lot of, that are like skewed to a certain waveform or what have you. So I don't like pickups that have too much high end or too much low end. And what I found with the custom buckers, because now I have those pickups in 7 different guitars, is they're very well balanced. They're a lot more reserved. So if you're someone who likes hotter pickups, these pickups might not be for you. And they have this ever so sweet top end to the bridge pickup. And that really, really appeals to me as a player. And now I don't have to go in and go like, okay, well, I got to take down the high end because of these pickups, or I got to take down the low end because I can dial in the low end a little more. And the top end, as I'm increasing it, it doesn't sound as shrill as like the 61R and 61T. So for me, these so far seem like the perfect pickup. There could definitely be pickups out there that I haven't tried that are more suited to me. And to be honest, that's really all that needs to be said about this guitar. It inspires me to play all the time. I want to pick it up quite often, a lot more than my USA Maestro. My USA Maestro, I actually had a whole bunch of guitars hanging up on the wall as you come downstairs into the studio area. And this one just seemed like it was kind of stuck on the stairs, and I wasn't always reaching for it. This I have to have by my desk because it just seems like I want to play it a lot more. So I kind of have all of my VOS guitars and my Murphy Lab right beside the desk because I don't want to go, okay, well, I want to grab this guitar and run up the stairs to get it. I want them as close to me as I possibly can. So that's it. Thanks for watching.